As we come ever closer to the end of this ridiculously exhausting and now I'm thinking somewhat regrettable task we call Wholesome Halloween, it seems only fitting to visit a quintessential horror classic, often regarded as one of the greatest horror movies of all time, 1982's Poltergeist. Put together by the dream team of Hollywood titan Steven Spielberg, who wrote and produced, and horror heavyweight Tobe Hooper, who directed the film, Poltergeist is the perfect amalgamation of these two artists' styles, Spielbergian soul with Tobe terror. Originally, Spielberg had intended to direct, but a clause in his contract at the time prevented him from directing another film while he made E.T., so Tobe Hooper was approached. Yep, Tobe Hooper. Let's get him to replace Steven Spielberg, the man who made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because those two people are interchangeable. I see no unforeseen consequences that could come from this swap, and oh my god, Tobe made it terrifying. Who could have seen that coming? In fairness, there is actually a huge dispute as to who really directed this thing. Some people believe that Steven Spielberg was the ghost director on it and he was the one who was putting in all the work behind the scenes. But others would say, if you ask a different cast member, that Tobe Hooper was the one putting in all the work. It's a hotly debated topic, and depending on who you ask, you get completely and wildly different answers. I'm not here to get into any of that drama. I'm just here to tell you what it feels like. And it sure as hell feels like Tobe Hooper went hog wild on a Steven Spielberg script. The film follows the story of the Freeling family. Successful real estate developer Steve, his wife Diane, their son Robbie, and their two daughters Dana and Carol Ann, who live in a quiet, peaceful little suburbia in California that Steve helped develop. The spooky tone is immediately set when the movie opens with Carol Ann awakening one night and becoming fixated on the static coming from a TV screen. Kneeling in front of it, she begins to converse with the flickering light in sentences that seem to imply someone on the other side is talking to her. And this is scary because little girls are fucking terrifying. Like, seriously, what is it with little girls in horror movies? They are so much scarier than any monster. And this fixation doesn't go away. On another night, when Carol Ann is staying in her parents' bed, she awakens again to converse with the static on the television. Eventually, a ghostly hand comes from the screen and there's a huge earthquake that wakes up the whole family. And after it calms down, Carol Ann looks back at her parents and says, "They're here." I'm never having kids. Never having them. After this, things start to get weird for the family. Bizarre and surreal occurrences begin to happen around the house. Furniture is stacked in strange patterns, glasses break by themselves, and as things get weirder and weirder, eventually the kitchen area seems to be home to something that keeps moving things and even people in fixed paths when they enter certain spots. It's all very unusual, and as time passes by, the incidents quickly intensify until eventually a big fucking tree in the yard comes alive and tries to straight up murder Robbie. And while the parents are trying to save one of their kids, another one, Carol Ann, is sucked into a portal in her closet and vanishes, though the family can still hear her voice echoing and staticky in the night through the television set. Desperate to get their daughter back and with no other options, the family eventually hire a paranormal investigation team as well as a spiritual medium, and with their efforts combined, the group attempt to save Carol Ann from whatever fate she may be facing, all while trying to survive the terrors of their own home. Arguably quite tame by today's standards, Poltergeist still has plenty of scares that manage to hold up. For me personally, there's a moment that still freaks me out, which as I'm about to describe, I now realise out loud sounds really silly, as some meat crawls across a kitchen counter. I swear though, it's really gross and uncomfortable in context, and in my defence, it's the weird bit where it sort of erupts that makes me feel a little off, not just the bit where it decides to have a bit of a walkabout. And in terms of other effective chills, let's just say that if you have a fear of clowns, I'd maybe skip this one. And I say that as somebody who is not afraid of clowns. I'd go so far as to say I even like clowns. I find them visually interesting. That said, fuck this one clown in particular. At the time of this movie's release, it was considered one of the most shockingly frightening films available, and actually barely escaped an R rating. Spielberg and Hooper had to actually appeal to get its certification down to PG, and quite frankly,
it's kinda surprising they won their appeal. While I'm certainly glad they did so more people could see it, because I personally believe that at this film's core, it is a wonderful story about the strength of the love that connects families, and one that all ages can enjoy, that doesn't change the fact that there is a scene in this movie where a man hallucinates peeling off his own face in huge bloody chunks, revealing his skull underneath.
PG! Jokes aside, I do understand the push for a PG rating. Besides the obvious financial incentive of being able to hit a bigger prospective audience, I mean. Because as far as horror goes, while it is on the scary end of the spectrum, especially for blockbusters at the time, this film is also one of the most optimistic, enchanting, and wholesome horror movies you could possibly watch.
The essence of the story is just about a comfortable middle-class family having their world torn asunder at the loss of a child and the extreme lengths their love will have them go to in order to get that child back, even when it seems like all hope is lost. The film literally has a mother step through a portal into the hell of another forbidden, unthinkable dimension she knows to be full of evils beyond comprehension, just to hold her child once more. And if that as a story isn't an incredible tribute and testament to the awe-inspiring power of a parent's love, then I don't know what possibly could be. This is a family movie, through and through, regardless of the face peeling, regardless of the slow crawling creepy shots of little girls in the dark conversing with TV static, regardless of the massive amounts of at the time groundbreaking special effects the film employs, it carries the same level of love for humanity and relationships as Spielberg's finest solo work. That's why it feels so inherently like the combined efforts of the two directors. While it goes to some creepy ass places that definitely feel very Tobe Hooper, the story and characters still feel very Spielberg. There's also some substantial commentary on the American middle class and the blissful ignorance that sometimes comes with creating their comforts.
Yeah, we're going to talk about capitalism again. For like the millionth time this marathon. I swear, I am not doing this intentionally. While I do appreciate when films hold up a mirror to certain flaws within dominating ideologies in society, I did not make this list with the plan of that being a recurring motif. That was not what I had in mind. It just so happens that this is a fairly common theme that comes up again and again in horror movies. Make of that what you will.
So yeah, anyway, a lot of time in the early sections of the film are spent fully realizing this idyllic white picket fence neighborhood full of laughing children and successful parents, enjoying things like just being kids growing up in the safe suburban streets, or if you're one of the grown-ups watching the big game with friends. It's a stereotypical depiction of the American dream fully realized by nuclear families, the kind that could have come straight out of the 50s Coca-Cola commercial. The characters of this movie occupy a reality where seemingly your biggest daily problem is an occasional spat with the neighbors. This is a presumably comfortably conservative neighborhood. And I'm not even saying that as like a bad thing, it just kind of feels that way. It's an all-white, wealthy neighborhood in suburban America. I mean, statistics would suggest, you know? And the filmmakers definitely seem to point towards this implication of a community based around modern conservatism when you see Steve happily reading through one of Ronald Reagan's biographies.
I don't think he's doing it ironically.
Of course, these characters are blissfully unaware of the capitalistic greed and shortcuts taken to allow them to live their comfortable lives, because guess what? The company that made this whole planned community, the company that you work for, Steve, built this place on a fucking cemetery, and now you've got pissed off ghost. Your problem, not ours.
I'm reminded of that meme, the one that's like, me sowing, haha, yeah! Fuck yeah! Me reaping, well this fucking sucks! What the fuck?
Also, there's a reason the connection to the dark forces is so inherently linked to the television sets within the movie. Televisual media was really taking over the public consciousness in the 80s, and it started to become a way a lot of people received their exposure to news and politics. Ronald Reagan's previous career as a film and TV actor/presenter made him very comfortable in front of cameras, and a lot of people credit his use of television as a medium as being key to his success at the time.
This isn't even an in hindsight thing. In the middle of his presidency on October 14th, 1984, Stephen R. Weissman published an article in the New York Times called The President and the Press, in which he is quoted as saying, "The president has displayed his news media artistry at a time when television has become the dominant means by which the public gets its news. From the beginning of his presidency, Mr. Reagan and his aides have understood and exploited what they acknowledge to be the built-in tendency of television to emphasize appearances and impressions more than information." He then went on to add, Changes in the technology and philosophy of news coverage have also complicated relationships between press and politician. The dominance of television has transformed journalism, making communication of the news so instantaneous that newspapers especially are no longer looked on by the public as the primary source of news. And I think this is the kind of idea that Spielberg, Hooper and team are trying to explore here. The final image of the film is even a television set being pushed outside of a hotel room and shut out. They seem to be critical of TV's role within the dynamics of middle-class America, using this fantastical tale to warn about the potential dangers and harm, perhaps in a way that was reflective of its ability to spout political and ideological propaganda, often under the disguise of being news. Good thing that never happens now, right? Oh, hey there, totally unrelated Fox News logo. What are you doing here?
This was actually not that uncommon a theme either for that period of time. Cronenberg's Videodrome would release only a year later, for example, and that film pretty much laser focuses on the relationship between 80s America and their television sets. Anyway, the main point is this film's got some meat on its bones. It's a horror classic for more reason than just its frights, after all. And ultimately, the main takeaway I personally had from it was the strength of the family dynamic. The other themes and commentary are definitely there too, but the thing you get swept up in is a family's love for their missing daughter and their desperate search to bring her home. It's a lovely, wholesome movie and I highly recommend it. I mean, as does almost everybody, it's genuinely considered one of the greatest films of all time, but in case the words of thousands of people far more reputable than I wasn't enough for you, here's my 2 cents on it. Yeah, now we're talking. Now you know the film's good.
Whew, okay. Day 29 of Wholesome Halloween is in the bag. We only have one more episode of this thing to go and then the special release on Halloween itself. I cannot believe this is still going. I really thought I'd have given up by now. Like, Jesus Christ, thank you so much for sticking with me this long. I did not think we'd make it this far, but here we are. There's only one more episode to go, so let's fucking go for it. Like, wow, thank you so much again. Like, who'd have thought we'd get here? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, commenting and subscribing to my Only Dans below with that red button. And I would also like to remind everybody that I do have a Patreon available. The link is in the description below. There's a $1 tier that right now gets you access to an exclusive Patreon Discord, will get your name in the credits of every video following Wholesome Halloween, and also has the potential of getting shout outs. And I'll be adding stuff to that as time goes on, so do look at that. You can donate as little as $1 or you can give as much as you want. It's entirely up to you. And if you can't afford that right now, that's cool too. I still love you anyways. But yes, other than that, we are one more episode till the end of this thing. So please join me tomorrow for the very last episode of Dan Dramble's 2020 Wholesome Halloween. See you then.